It was an autumn afternoon on Millionaire's Row, the sky heavy and gray, the air still damp from earlier rain. 12-year-old Daniel Rivers walked soaked to the bone, his shoes, if they could be called shoes, tied together with wire and sheer will, leaving muddy prints on sidewalks that cost more per square foot than his entire neighborhood. He didn't belong here. Every instinct told him so. The mansions rose like silent fortresses, lawns manicured to perfection, luxury cars gleaming in driveways like sleeping predators, security cameras tracking his every step with cold indifference. But Daniel kept walking, fingers clutching the crumpled flyer in his pocket. The ink was smudged, the paper soft from rain, but he had memorized every word weeks earlier. Autumn Charity Gala at Sterling Manor. Entertainment and performances welcome. All talented youth encouraged to audition. All talented youth. Not wealthy youth. Not well-dressed youth. Just talented. And Daniel had one gift. The only thing in his life that ever made sense, that ever made him feel whole. He could dance. Not the polished ballet of expensive studios. Not the choreographed routines of private academies. Daniel danced like wind moves through trees, like water finds its way around obstacles, like music becomes flesh. He had learned on cracked sidewalks, in abandoned warehouses, in any empty space where rhythm could live. His teachers had been grainy YouTube videos on library computers, street performers who took pity on a skinny kid with hungry eyes, and his own relentless, solitary practice. When Daniel danced, he wasn't poor. He wasn't the boy whose father vanished before he was born. He wasn't the son of a mother working 3 jobs who still couldn't keep the lights on. He was pure motion, pure music, pure freedom. Sterling Manor rose ahead like a stone and glass palace transplanted from a European fairy tale. Daniel's stomach twisted with the familiar anxiety of knowing he was trespassing in every possible way. The security guard at the gate, Officer Mitchell, was already watching him, hand moving toward his radio. "Stop right there," Mitchell called, stepping into his path. His expression said clearly, "You do not belong here." "I'm here for the audition," Daniel said, pulling out the flyer with trembling fingers. "For the gala. It says all talented youth." Mitchell snatched the paper, examined it like evidence of a crime. His eyes traveled from the flyer to Daniel's face, down to the broken shoes, back up to the too small second-hand jacket. "This is for legitimate performers," he said. "Not street kids looking for trouble." "I'm not looking for trouble," Daniel replied, forcing his voice steady. "I'm a dancer. I just want a chance. A dancer." Mitchell's laugh was sharp and mean. "Boy, look at yourself. You're filthy. You probably haven't eaten properly in days." The Sterling Gala is one of the most prestigious events in the city. They have professionals, trained artists, people with credentials. Daniel had heard worse. Much worse. He stood his ground. "The flyer says all talented youth are encouraged." Before Mitchell could respond, the mansion's front door opened. A girl emerged, pushed in a wheelchair by a stern-faced nurse. She was perhaps 10, with long hair catching the pale afternoon light. But it was her eyes that stopped Daniel cold. Sad eyes, old eyes, eyes that had seen too much pain for someone so young. Sophia Sterling. Even Daniel, who knew nothing of high society, had heard her story. Daughter of billionaire real estate mogul Harrison Sterling. 2 years earlier, a car accident had killed her mother and left her paralyzed from the waist down. The tabloids had feasted on the tragedy. Photos of the grieving father carrying his broken daughter. Stories of the best doctor's money could buy who still couldn't restore her legs. Sophia's gaze found Daniel, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. Her expression shifted from boredom to curiosity. "Who's that?" she asked the nurse, pointing directly at him. "No one, dear," the nurse, Mrs. Chen, replied. "Just someone who got lost." "I'm not lost," Daniel said, finding courage he didn't know he possessed. "I'm here to audition for the gala." Sophia's eyes widened. "You're a performer." "I'm a dancer." "We need to go back inside," Mrs. Chen said firmly, beginning to turn the wheelchair. "Wait," Sophia's voice carried surprising authority. "I want to see him dance. Miss Sterling, your father would not approve. My father isn't here right now." Daniel's heart hammered. This wasn't how he'd imagined his audition. No formal stage, no panel of judges, just a driveway and a girl in a wheelchair watching him while a security guard glared. But something in Sophia's eyes called to him. A loneliness he recognized, a desperate hunger for something real and beautiful in a life defined by limitation and grief. "I can dance," Daniel said quietly. "I don't need music. The music is always there if you know how to listen." Mrs. Chen looked deeply uncomfortable, but she knew better than to argue with Sophia Sterling. "1 minute," she said to Daniel. "Then you leave." Daniel nodded. His heart pounded so hard he felt it in his throat. He stepped back, giving himself space, closed his eyes. The world fell away. The mansion, the guard, the watching eyes, all dissolved. He heard the music that lived inside him always, felt the rhythm in his bones, and began to move. He flowed across the driveway, body telling a story without words. Every gesture precise yet organic, every turn controlled yet wild. He forgot his broken shoes, forgot the mud on his clothes, forgot everything except the pure joy of motion. This was who he was. This was the only thing that had ever made sense in his chaotic, difficult life. When he stopped, breathing hard, the world snapped back. Sophia's hands were pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Chen looked stunned. Even Officer Mitchell had gone quiet, his earlier hostility replaced by reluctant amazement. "How did you learn to move like that?" Sophia whispered. "I taught myself," Daniel said simply. "I've been dancing since I was 5. Before she could reply, a voice cut through the moment like a blade. "What exactly is going on here?" Daniel turned to see a man striding down the mansion's front steps, and he knew immediately this was Harrison Sterling. Tall, imposing, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than Daniel's mother made in 6 months. His face was handsome in a harsh way, all sharp angles and cold calculation. But it was his eyes that made Daniel's blood run cold. They were empty, not angry, not cruel, just profoundly empty, like windows into an abandoned house. "Daddy," Sophia's voice brightened. "You have to see this boy dance. He's amazing. He should be in the gala." Harrison's gaze moved to Daniel, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. His lip curled in an expression that wasn't quite a smile and wasn't quite a sneer. "This child," Harrison said, the word tasting bad in his mouth, "was trespassing on private property." "Sir, I tried to send him away," Officer Mitchell said quickly, clearly afraid. "But Miss Sophia wanted to see him perform and I thought, you're not paid to think, Mitchell. You're paid to keep undesirable elements away from my home." Harrison walked closer, circling Daniel like a predator examining prey. "Look at you. Filthy clothes, broken shoes. You probably haven't bathed in days. And you have the audacity to come to my home and present yourself to my daughter looking like something that crawled out of the gutter." Each word was designed to wound, and they hit their marks perfectly. Daniel felt shame burning through him, hot and acidic. "Daddy, stop," Sophia said, her earlier joy evaporating. "He can dance. Really dance. You should have seen." "I don't need to see anything," Harrison interrupted, not even looking at his daughter. His eyes stayed locked on Daniel. "I can see everything I need to see. This is clearly some street urchin who thinks he can con his way into our home, probably planning to steal whatever he can get his hands on." "I'm not a thief," Daniel said, voice shaking but determined. "I'm a dancer. I came here because the flyer said." "I know what the flyer says," Harrison cut him off. "It was my wife's idea years ago. She believed in giving opportunities to talented youth." He said the words mockingly. "She had a bleeding heart for lost causes. But my wife is dead, and I've learned that most people who claim to be talented are simply delusional." The cruelty was breathtaking. Daniel had faced bullies before, people who looked down on him for being poor. But Harrison Sterling's contempt was surgical, precise, designed to destroy. "Let me tell you what I see," Harrison continued, voice dropping to something almost conversational, which somehow made it worse. I see a dirty child who's probably practiced a few moves from videos, who thinks that qualifies as talent. I see someone who doesn't understand that real art requires training, discipline, resources. Things you clearly don't have and never will have. Let me dance with your daughter, Daniel said suddenly. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Harrison's head snapped toward him, expression shifting from contempt to genuine shock. What did you just say? Daniel's heart was racing, but he forced himself to continue. Let me dance with Sophia. I've seen her eyes. She's trapped. Not just in that wheelchair, but in loneliness. I know what that feels like. Let me show her that movement is more than walking. Let me teach her that she can still dance even if she can't walk. Harrison's face went through several rapid changes. Shock, disbelief, and then something that looked almost like rage. You arrogant little. He stopped himself, taking a visible breath. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly calm. You think you can help my daughter? You, a street rat who probably doesn't even have a home to go back to. Think you have something to offer Sophia Sterling? I think everyone has something to offer, Daniel said, surprised by his own courage. And I think Sophia deserves to feel joy again, to feel like she's more than her wheelchair. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, something flickered in Harrison's eyes. Pain, maybe, or recognition. But it was gone so fast Daniel might have imagined it. You want to dance with my daughter? Harrison asked, and his smile was the cruelest thing Daniel had ever seen. Fine. I'll make you a deal. The gala is in 2 weeks. If you can perform, truly perform, not just flail around like you probably did for Sophia. If you can prove that you have actual talent and not just the delusions of a desperate child, then yes, you can dance with my daughter. Daniel's breath caught. Really? Really? Harrison confirmed. But when you fail, and you will fail, I want you to never come back here. I want you to accept that you don't belong in this world, that you never will belong, and that the sooner you accept your place in life, the less disappointment you'll face. It was a trap. Daniel knew it was a trap. Harrison Sterling was setting him up to fail publicly, to crush whatever hope he dared to kindle, but Daniel also knew he had no choice. I accept, he said. Harrison's smile widened. Excellent. The audition is this Saturday at 3 p.m. Don't be late. He turned to Officer Mitchell. Escort this boy off the property and make sure he understands that if he shows up looking like he does now, he won't make it past the gate. As Mitchell grabbed Daniel's arm, not roughly but firmly, Sophia called out, Wait, what's your name? Daniel looked back at her. At this girl who'd shown him more kindness in 5 minutes than most people showed him in months. Daniel, he said. Daniel Rivers. I'll see you at the audition, Daniel Rivers, Sophia said. And despite everything, she was smiling. Show my father what real dancing looks like. As Officer Mitchell walked Daniel back to the gate, Harrison Sterling watched them go. His expression unreadable. But inside, something had shifted. A tiny splinter of doubt had lodged itself in his carefully constructed armor. Because that dirty boy had moved with a grace that money couldn't buy, and for just a moment, Harrison had seen his daughter smile, and that terrified him more than he would ever admit. Daniel spent the next days at the Maple Street Community Center, a crumbling building with peeling paint and cracked windows, but it had one treasure, a large empty room with a mirror along one wall. He had been coming here since he was 7, sneaking in through a back door that never quite locked. Mrs. Washington, who ran the after-school programs, had caught him once and instead of kicking him out, simply said, Don't break anything and clean up after yourself. Now, 5 days after his encounter with Harrison Sterling, Daniel was here every moment he wasn't in school or helping his mother. The audition was approaching like a storm, and he had never felt more unprepared. You're going to wear yourself out, Mrs. Washington said one evening, standing in the doorway with 2 bottles of water. She was in her 60s, gray hair in a practical bun, eyes that had seen every kind of hardship yet remained kind. I can't wear myself out, Daniel replied, accepting the water gratefully. I have to be perfect. Perfect is impossible, honey. You know that. She settled into a folding chair. I've been watching you dance for 5 years. You're already better than most professionals I've seen. What's really going on? Daniel sat hard on the floor, legs finally giving out. I made a stupid promise to a girl in a wheelchair. I told her I could teach her to dance even though she can't walk. And her father. His voice cracked. Her father is setting me up to fail so he can prove that people like me don't belong in his world. Harrison Sterling, Mrs. Washington said. Not a question. Daniel looked up surprised. You know him. I know of him. Everyone in this city knows of him. Brilliant businessman, ruthless negotiator. And from what I hear, a man who died inside the day his wife did. Daniel absorbed this, trying to reconcile it with the cold, cruel man who had humiliated him. He used to be different, Mrs. Washington continued. Before the accident. Kinder. His wife Margaret was the heart of their family. She ran charity programs, volunteered at hospitals, genuinely cared about making the world better. Harrison supported her, loved her, built his empire partly to fund her causes. Then the accident happened. Margaret died instantly. Sophia survived but lost the use of her legs. And Harrison lost himself. That doesn't excuse how he treated me. No, it doesn't. Pain isn't an excuse for cruelty. But understanding where someone's cruelty comes from can help you navigate it. She leaned forward. Daniel, why did you really offer to dance with his daughter? The question caught him off guard. He'd been asking himself the same thing for 5 days. Because, he said slowly, working through his thoughts, when I looked at her, I saw myself, trapped, invisible, desperate for something, anything that would make her feel alive again. When I dance, I'm free, even if it's just for a few minutes. I thought, maybe I could give her that feeling. Mrs. Washington's eyes shone with unshed tears. That's a beautiful gift, Daniel. But you need to understand something. Harrison Sterling isn't going to make this easy. He's going to do everything in his power to prove you wrong, to humiliate you so thoroughly that Sophia never asks about you again. I know. And you're still going to try. I have to. Gave Sophia hope. I saw it in her eyes. If I don't show up, if I let her father's cruelty stop me, then I'm teaching her that hope is stupid, that dreams are pointless. I can't do that to her. Mrs. Washington smiled, proud and sad at the same time. Then let's make sure you're ready. Show me what you've been working on. For the next 3 hours, Mrs. Washington, who Daniel learned had been a professional dancer before an injury ended her career, pushed him harder than he'd ever been pushed. She critiqued every movement, demanded precision he didn't know he was capable of. Your foot is sloppy, she said bluntly. You're relying on momentum instead of control. Again. Daniel tried again. And again. And again. By the time the community center closed for the night, every muscle in his body was screaming, but his movements had a polish they'd lacked before. Better, Mrs. Washington said. Not perfect, but better. Now go home. Your mother is probably worried. Daniel's apartment was a 40-minute walk. He could have taken the bus, but the $1.50 fare was better saved for food. As he walked through streets that grew progressively rougher, he thought about Sophia Sterling in her mansion, surrounded by luxury but trapped in her wheelchair. His own home was a 2-room apartment above a laundromat. The constant vibration from the machines below had cracked the walls, and the smell of industrial detergent had soaked into everything. But it was home. His mother, Elena Rivers, was asleep on the couch when he entered. She was still wearing her diner uniform from the evening shift. A second uniform from her morning hotel job was draped over a chair, ready for tomorrow. Daniel covered her with a blanket, careful not to wake her. She worked herself to exhaustion every day, and the few hours of sleep she got were precious. He noticed the mail on the table, mostly bills, all stamped with red, overdue notices, and the tiny bedroom they shared. Daniel pulled out the notebook where he'd been sketching ideas for his performance. But his mind kept drifting to Sophia, to the sadness in her eyes, to the way her father had looked at her with something that might have been love, buried deep beneath layers of ice and anger. Everyone was trapped in something. Everyone was fighting battles others couldn't see. And in 8 days, Daniel would walk into that audition and try to show them all that movement could be freedom, that grace could exist without working legs, that hope was worth the risk of pain. He just hoped he was strong enough to deliver on that impossible promise. The day before the audition, Daniel's world fell apart. His mother collapsed at the diner during the lunch rush. The manager called him out of school, voice tight with worry. "Your mom's at Mercy Hospital. She's asking for you." Daniel ran the 12 blocks, lungs burning, terror clawing at his chest. He found Elena in an emergency room bed, looking small and fragile under harsh fluorescent lights. "I'm fine," she said immediately, seeing the panic in his eyes. "Just exhaustion. They want to keep me overnight for observation. Mom, listen to me." Her hand gripped his with surprising strength. "Tomorrow is your audition. You're going. I'll be fine here. I can't leave you." "Yes, you can. You will." Elena's eyes were fierce. "I didn't work 3 jobs so you could give up on your dreams because I got tired. You're going to that audition and you're going to dance like your life depends on it." A nurse entered with discharge papers. Not overnight observation. They were sending her home because she couldn't afford to stay. Daniel saw the shame in his mother's eyes and felt something break inside him. That night, alone in their apartment while Elena slept fitfully on the couch, Daniel found an old shoebox under her bed. Inside were newspaper clippings about the Sterling family. The accident that killed Margaret and paralyzed Sophia, Harrison at the wheel. And one article that made Daniel's blood run cold. Sterling's last dance. Businessman's secret past as professional dancer ends with wife's death. Harrison Sterling had been a dancer. A brilliant one, according to the article. He'd given it all up for business, but Margaret had encouraged him to keep dancing privately. The night of the accident, they'd been returning from a dance competition where Harrison had performed for the first time in years. He'd been driving. Daniel understood everything now. Harrison wasn't just grieving his wife and his daughter's paralysis. He was drowning in guilt, convinced that his dancing, his passion, had killed his wife and destroyed his daughter. He had locked away his gift and in doing so, locked away his daughter's hope. Saturday arrived with cruel sunshine. Daniel dressed in his best Goodwill shirt and altered pants. But now he carried something more than hope. He carried understanding. The mansion's ballroom was transformed. A makeshift stage, 3 judges, and Harrison Sterling standing behind them like an executioner at a trial. 5 other performers went first. Technically perfect, emotionally empty. The judges nodded approvingly. Harrison watched with dead eyes. Then they called Daniel's name. He walked to the stage, found Sophia in the crowd. She mouthed, "For me." The music started. Daniel didn't just dance. He told a story of loss and guilt. Of love that survived death. Of a man who'd stopped dancing because he blamed beauty for tragedy. Every movement was a conversation with Harrison Sterling's broken soul. When the music ended, the ballroom was silent. Then one judge, an elderly woman named Catherine Moore, stood up, tears streaming down her face. "In 40 years of judging dance," she said, voice shaking, "I have never seen anything like that." The technical precision was remarkable for someone self-taught. But the emotion, the storytelling. She looked at Harrison. "This boy has a gift." The other 2 judges nodded agreement. One was already writing notes. "We should discuss compensation for the gala. Perhaps a featured." "No," Harrison's voice cut through the room like a blade. He stepped forward, face pale, hands clenched into fists. "Absolutely not. This boy will not perform at the Sterling Gala." "Harrison, did you not see what we just witnessed?" Catherine protested. "I saw a street performer with some natural ability and no formal training. The Sterling Gala showcases trained professionals, not charity cases we pulled from the sidewalk." "That's not fair," Sophia's voice rang out. She'd wheeled herself forward, face flushed with anger. "Daddy, he was incredible. You know he was." "Sophia, that's enough." "No. You promised. You said if he was good enough he could dance with me." "You lied." Harrison's expression flickered. Pain, guilt, something desperate. But his voice remained firm. I said if he demonstrated professional-level talent. He did not meet that standard. You're lying because you're scared, Sophia shouted. You saw what I saw. Everyone saw it. Guards, Harrison called. Please escort Mr. Rivers from the property. 2 security guards moved toward Daniel, but Catherine Moore stepped between them. Harrison Sterling, she said, voice trembling with fury. I have known you since you were a boy. I taught your wife to dance. I was at your wedding. What you're doing right now would break Margaret's heart. Get out, Harrison roared, losing all composure. All of you. The audition is over. There will be no street performers at my gala. The room erupted in chaos. Judges protesting, Sophia sobbing, guards looking uncertain. Daniel stood frozen on the stage, watching his dream shatter. Then a phone camera flash went off. Everyone turned. A young woman stood in the back. Jennifer Martinez, Channel 7 News. Jennifer Martinez, Channel 7, she said calmly. Mr. Sterling, did you just publicly humiliate a 12-year-old boy because he reminded you of your own past as a dancer? Harrison's face went from white to crimson. You have no right to be here. I have every right. This is a charity event. Public interest. Jennifer held up her phone. I recorded everything. The performance, your daughter's plea, your rejection, should make for a very interesting story about how Manhattan's most prominent philanthropist treats talented children from poor families. You wouldn't dare. Watch the 6 o'clock news. Jennifer's smile was steel. Harrison looked like he might explode. But before he could speak, Sophia wheeled herself to the center of the room. I have something to say. Her voice was small but steady. My father thinks he's protecting me, but he's not. He's trapping me just like he trapped himself when he stopped dancing after Mom died. Sophia, please. No. You've been running from this for 2 years. You've been punishing yourself and me and everyone around you because you're too afraid to face what Mom actually wanted. She thrust the journal toward Daniel. Read it out loud. Daniel took the journal carefully. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. To whoever finds this, tell Harrison he was wrong about everything. The accident isn't his fault. Dancing didn't kill me. Love didn't kill me. A drunk driver killed me, and that's just cruel randomness. Tell him to dance again. Tell him to let Sophia dance. Tell him that imprisoning himself in guilt is the real tragedy. Tell him I loved him completely, perfectly. And that means trusting he'll survive this and choose life. Choose joy. Choose to believe that beauty is worth the risk. Always worth the risk. Tell Sophia her mother's last thought was pride. Pride that she'll grow up brave enough to love despite pain. And tell Harrison to stop punishing himself with success and start honoring me with happiness. Dance, my love. Please. For me. Keep Dan. The entry stopped mid-word. That's when the impact had happened. By the time Daniel finished reading, Harrison Sterling was on his knees, sobs tearing from his chest like something vital being ripped out. She wanted me to dance, he gasped. She wanted, and I stopped. I thought. Sophia wheeled herself to her father, wrapped her arms around him. She wanted you to live, Daddy. She wanted us both to live. Not just survive. Live. Harrison looked up at Daniel through tears. I've been so cruel to you. Because you're everything I used to be. Everything I killed when Margaret died. You didn't kill it, Daniel said quietly. You just locked it away. And maybe I can't make Sophia walk. But maybe I can show you both that movement. Real movement. Doesn't require working legs. It just requires a willing heart. Harrison Sterling looked at this 12-year-old boy who'd somehow become the key to unlocking 2 years of grief and asked the question that would change everything. Will you teach me to dance again? The Sterling Gala took place 3 weeks later, but it was nothing like Harrison had originally planned. The press conference 2 days after the rooftop encounter had shocked Manhattan's elite. Harrison Sterling, standing before cameras with red-rimmed eyes and his daughter beside him, had done something unprecedented. I have spent 2 years, he said, voice shaking, punishing myself for my wife's death by punishing everyone around me, especially my daughter. I convinced myself that passion was dangerous, that joy was irresponsible, that the only way to protect Sophia was to teach her that the world was cruel and hope was foolish. He looked directly at the camera. I was wrong, and I owe Daniel Rivers an apology that no words can adequately express. This boy saw my daughter's pain and offered her something I couldn't. The belief that being broken doesn't mean being dead. He announced the creation of the Margaret Sterling Foundation for Artistic Excellence. Full scholarships, training, and support for talented young people from families who couldn't otherwise afford professional arts education. You are our first scholarship recipient, he told Daniel. Full funding for Catherine Moore's Academy, plus a living stipend for you and your mother. No child should have to choose between helping their family and developing their gifts. There's more, Harrison continued. I'm also creating a specialized program called Dance Without Limits. Adaptive dance training for children with disabilities. Sophia will co-direct it, and we'd like you to be our lead instructor. The crowd erupted in applause, but Daniel could barely hear it over the roaring in his ears. Why? He managed to ask. Harrison knelt down so they were eye level. Because you gave me back something I thought was dead. You showed me that my wife's legacy isn't grief. It's grace. You taught my daughter that limitation isn't the same as impossibility. And you proved that real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the courage to keep dancing even when the world tells you to stop. 6 months later, the Margaret Sterling Foundation had provided scholarships to 200 children across 5 states. Dance Without Limits had programs in 12 cities. And Daniel Rivers, the dirty boy who'd walked into Sterling Manor with nothing but hope and talent, had become the face of a movement proving that excellence blooms wherever courage is planted. But the moment Daniel treasured most came during their first Dance Without Limits showcase. Sophia performed a piece she'd choreographed herself, a solo that used her wheelchair not as a limitation, but as an extension of her artistry. Wheels spinning, arms flowing, face radiating joy. When she finished, the audience stood and cheered. But Sophia wheeled directly to where Harrison sat in the front row. Did you see, Daddy? Did you see me dance? Harrison was crying openly now, no longer ashamed of his tears. I saw you fly, sweetheart. Your mother would be so proud. She'd be proud of you too, Sophia said. For choosing to live again. For choosing us. As father and daughter embraced, Daniel stood in the wings with his mother, watching the family he'd helped heal. You changed their lives, Elena whispered. No, Daniel replied, thinking of his mother's sacrifices, of Mrs. Washington's patience, of Sophia's courage, of Harrison's transformation. We changed each other. That's what real dancing is. Moving together, supporting each other, creating something beautiful that none of us could create alone. And in that moment, Daniel Rivers understood the most important lesson of all. That true wealth isn't what you have, but what you give. That real strength isn't never falling, but always rising. And that the most powerful thing anyone can do is dance. Not just with their feet, but with their whole heart. Even when the world says it's impossible, especially then.